They sold us perfection. Porcelain skin, razor-sharp cheekbones, faces that never blinked under 10,000 watts of studio light. But Hollywood's golden age ran on an open secret. If the camera loved you, the contract survived. If it didn't, you were fixed. Some fixes were mild. Others were brutal quiet lifts, shaved bones, scorched hairlines, injections that stiffened smiles and rewrote identities. A few worked for a while. Many didn't. Behind the glamour reels lay ice packs, bandages, and 1,000 mirrors that told harsher truths than any critic. Tonight, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on 13 golden age icons whose cosmetic gambles came with a heavy cost. Some choices were confirmed, others alleged and debated for decades. All share the same pressure cooker, a studio system that equated youth with value and improvement with survival. As you watch, ask yourself, what would you risk to stay in the spotlight one more year? Stay to the end. There's a twist to how these stories echo right now, in an era that claims to be more real than ever. Mary Pickford. The silent era's face pulled too tight. Mary Pickford wasn't just a star. She was the movies, America's sweetheart, co-founder of United Artists, business genius. But as talkies reshaped the industry, the girl with the curls faced a wall no fame could move: time. Biographers and makeup artists from the era have long suggested that Pickford chased the clock with multiple surgical lifts as the 1932nd wore on. The more she tried to preserve the ingenue, the more critics whispered that her face had grown mask-like elegant on still photos, less forgiving in motion. What made it tragic wasn't vanity, it was branding. Studios had packaged Mary as forever young, and the audience bought the box. When the woman in the mirror no longer matched the poster, the fixes multiplied. Friends later described an increasingly private Pickford, retreating to Pickfair as the industry she helped invent moved on. Whether the procedures were few or many, the cost was the same. A pioneer forced to defend a myth that no one, no matter how powerful, can keep. But she wasn't the only Golden Age titan, pushed into the doctor's chair by the very image she created. Joan Crawford, a star who outworked time until time pushed back. No one fought harder than Joan Crawford. She reinvented herself across 4 decades, from flapper to noir queen to Oscar winner. Publicly, she credited sleep, discipline, and a famously icy skin routine. Privately, Hollywood old-timers long speculated about surgical help, subtle early on, then more aggressive as the years advanced. Photographers noticed telltale tightness at the hairline. Makeup artists swapped tricks to disguise faint lines that came and went from shoot to shoot. Whether every rumor is true or not, the resulting look became a talking point. A face drawn so taut in later years that critics said it could cut glass. Crawford's tragedy wasn't that she chased youth, it's that her work ethic made youth part of the work. When studios demanded you look 28 forever, you didn't argue. You showed up bandaged, powdered, ready to hit your light. And then came a performer who took those expectations and turned them into an obsession with one very specific feature. Gloria Graham, a lip line that changed everything. Gloria Graham could do more with a half smile than most actors could with a monologue, but she fixated on that smile, particularly the shape of her upper lip. Co-workers from 1,950-second sets recalled she'd stuff cotton or bits of tissue inside her mouth to push it out during close-ups, and various accounts say she pursued procedures to alter its line. Over time, the experiments reportedly affected articulation. Some directors adjusted coverage to protect her. It's the most Golden Age story imaginable. A peerless actress, desperate to make perfection just a millimeter more perfect, only to learn that micro-tweaks can throw the whole instrument off. Graham remained compelling. She even won an Oscar. But the lip saga followed her from set to set, a cautionary tale whispered in makeup rooms for decades. If you think that's extreme, the next transformation wasn't surgical at first, it was electrical. Rita Hayworth electrolysis, bleach, and a new face for a new name. Before she became Rita Hayworth, she was Margarita Cancino, dazzling dancer, low hairline, darker complexion. Studio handlers decided America needed a different kind of star. They pushed a full hairline redo, long, painful electrolysis sessions to raise and reshape it, aggressive lightening regimens to soften ethnic markers, hours under hot lamps to burn perfection into place. The transformation worked spectacularly. Rita became the dream, but she paid in endurance and identity. She once lamented that men went to bed with Gilda and woke up with her public fantasy outliving private reality. It's not fair to call what she endured a disaster. Her beauty on screen is undeniable, but the toll was real, permanent, aching, and inescapable. Meanwhile, another icon pursued medical fixes later in life and found herself at war with mirrors and gossip columns alike. Hedy Lamarr, the most beautiful woman in film versus the scalpel. Hedy Lamarr helped invent frequency-hopping tech that would eventually inform Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. She was also, by universal consensus, unnervingly beautiful. As decades passed, various reports suggest she pursued lifts and facial tightening to preserve that famous symmetry. Friends said she became increasingly wary of cameras unless lighting and angles were controlled exactly. In some late-period photos, the face that launched 1,000 taglines looks strained, the natural softness replaced by surgical geometry. It wasn't vanity, it was economics. The world branded her a face, and the market rarely pays for nuance. When your asset is primarily visual, any perceived slip can feel existential. Hedy's post-stardom privacy makes separating rumor from record tricky, but the broader truth stands. The industry that commodified her beauty offered no graceful exit ramp. For our next legend, the toolkit was less surgical, more inventive tape, corsetry, myth-making, and a rumor that will probably never die. Marlene Dietrich, the queen of tension and the legend of the lost molars. Dietrich engineered herself. She used tape lifts at the temples, severe hairlines, sculptural lighting, and a posture so erect it seemed architectural. Crew members described intricate nightly rigging, the original non-surgical facelift. Over time, whispers gathered, had she had surgical lifts? Did she really have molars removed to hollow the cheeks? The dental rumor has been debated for decades. What's certain is that Marlene pursued an almost militant control over her image. If there was a casualty, it wasn't a botched procedure so much as the daily strain of perfection. Imagine living every waking hour under a private grip, literally pulling your face into the silhouette that the world demanded. Even for a woman as iron-willed as Dietrich, that tension had to go somewhere. But sometimes, the most punishing judgments didn't come in the 1,942nd. They arrived 70 years later, instantly, on social media feeds. Kim Novak, a 1,952nd icon, meets 2,010-second bullying. Kim Novak, the cool fire of Vertigo and Bell, Book and Candle, stepped onto an awards show stage in the 2010 second and met a storm. Viewers fixated on her face, headlines screamed. People speculated about fillers and lifts. Novak herself said she'd had fat injections and medical issues that changed her look. The cruelty stung. Overnight, what should have been a victory lap turned into a referendum on aging. Why include Kim? Because she proves the golden age bargain never expired. Look like the poster or pay the price. The procedures weren't the disaster the public reaction was. Novak's response, standing up for herself, speaking frankly, became a late-life masterclass in dignity under fire. Another 1,952nd glamour celebrity, however, leaned hard into the knife and let the world watch in real time. Zsa Zsa Gabor, when enhancements become a persona. Zsa Zsa was celebrity before celebrity was a job description. She sparkled through the 52nd and then made a second act from being Zsa Zsa. Along the way, she embraced repeated cosmetic surgeries, joking about them with the same ease she used to deliver a one-liner. Over the decades, the face changed tighter, sometimes swollen, the angles sharp where they once flowed. Here's the tricky part. When does a high-maintenance beauty regimen cross from maintenance into erasing the very features that made you famous? The line moves with culture, technique, and taste. What's undeniable is that Zsa Zsa's public identity fused with the very procedures that altered her. She didn't just have work, the work became part of the act. And while many women shouldered this pressure, Golden Age men were not immune to corrections either. Tony Curtis, the nose that launched 1,000 teen beat covers. Tony Curtis had charisma to burn, but early handlers pushed a rhinoplasty to refine his profile and broaden appeal. It did. He became a heartthrob. Some like it hot Spartacus, posters on bedroom walls. Still, Curtis later admitted the industry's beauty machine could be suffocating. Teeth, hair, waistline, jawline, everything optimized and inspected. Was his procedure disastrous? Number? It worked by the metrics that mattered then. The cost came later. In a career that had to keep feeding a look, the studio helped design. For male stars, the blade was subtler, but the calculus matched. Fix what keeps you out of the close-up. And if Curtis was the proof of concept, the next leading man became the template literally manufactured for stardom. Rock Hudson, the studio system's finest product. Agent Henry Wilson was famous for turning handsome young men into marquee names, and Rock Hudson was the crown jewel. Part of that machinery, according to multiple histories, involved small surgical refinements. Teeth capped, nose tidied, hairline crafted. Nothing radical, everything strategic. The result? A face that sold millions of tickets and became an American ideal. But ideals don't age, people do. In later years, as roles shifted and the matinee idol veneer thinned, Hudson faced the same paradox every studio product eventually meets. The brand they built won't let them evolve. The fixes weren't disasters at the time. The disaster was the trap, an image so successful, it locked the man inside it. One star, though, made a running gag of her nips and tucks until the laughter faded and the mirror got serious. Phyllis Diller, comedy's most candid patient. Phyllis Diller hit big in the late 1952nd and 1962nd, carving out a lane by roasting herself as gleefully as she roasted everyone else. She was also disarmingly open about her many procedures, lifts, peels, dental work, the whole catalog, and turned them into punchlines. Of course it's my real hair. I paid for it. Audiences loved the honesty. But honesty doesn't mean immunity. Aging in public, even with a joke in your pocket, means every bruise, every swelling, every too-tight week shows up in 8x10 glossies. She made a career out of making light of it. The industry never truly did. Diller's saga underlines a key truth. Even when surgery works, the ongoing maintenance can be its own grind, physically and emotionally. Not everyone joked. Some tried to keep changes hidden and got caught in the harshest glare of all, the one cast by their own legend. Mae West, the last great illusion. Mae West built a career out of appetite and audacity. She strutted onto sets in the 1932nd and didn't stop commanding attention for half a century. As she returned to the spotlight in her later years, fans and critics noted a waxy, hyper-managed look, the byproduct, many believed, of aggressive lifts, fillers, and rigid staging meant to lock the icon in a timeless pose. Here, Disastrous isn't a botched suture. It's the mismatch between memory and reality. The public wanted 1933 Mae to walk through a 1978 door. She obliged as best she could, using every tool within reach. The effect at times was eerie, the old silhouette traced onto a new canvas. For some, a miracle. For others, a reminder that even legends can't rewrite biology. Our 13th story takes us back overseas and then right back into the current debate over enhancement, identity, and regret. Nancy Kwan, a trailblazer, caught in a modern crossfire. Nancy Kwan burst into the early 1962nd with the world of Susie Wong and Flower Drum Song, breaking barriers for Asian leads in Hollywood. Decades later, she spoke openly about a facelift, hoping for a refreshed look rather than reinvention. On its own, that's unremarkable. Millions do the same. What made it brutal was the public reaction. Endless, before, after, arguments about whether she'd lost, what made her special. Kwan's case crystallizes this list. In the golden age, you were corrected to fit in. Now you're attacked for correcting at all. She navigated both worlds, the old studio gauntlet and the modern internet. In each, the headline stayed the same: a woman's face turned into a public referendum. The hidden costs, and why these stories still hit hard. If you've noticed a pattern, you're not imagining it. Most of these disasters weren't single catastrophic surgeries with sensational courtroom outcomes. They were cumulative tolls: the persistent tightening, the chronic soreness, the subtle speech changes, the lost softness around the eyes, the simple human desire to look like yourself, and the sickening fear that you no longer do. Some facts are ironclad: electrolysis can be torturous, fat injections can swell unpredictably, early lifts left obvious scars. Some details live in the fog of gossip columns and studio spin: rumored, alleged, disputed, but the pressure behind them is crystal clear. Studios wrote the rules. If your nose read too ethnic, your hairline too low, your profile too real, you were adjusted. Cameras were cruel. Pre-digital lenses and hard key lights demanded surfaces that didn't move. Contracts were silent on pain. There was no HR department for a face being slowly redesigned. And the irony? The public often fell in love with the after, then punished the same star later for maintaining it. The fix that saved a career at 28 could be the mistake mocked at 58. Micro-stories and myths that won't die. Lightning round. To deepen the context, here are a few quick notes that swirl around Golden Age beautification. Some verified, some contested, all telling. Carole Lombard reportedly had minor corrective work after her teenage car accident. The result was subtle and career-saving. A reminder that not every intervention ends badly. Marilyn Monroe is often said to have had a small chin implant and nasal tip refinement early on. If true, they were gentle and integrated so well that the public myth became born perfect. Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas leaned more on training and dental work than on knives, showing that male fixes were often sold as athleticism rather than surgery. Marlene's molar rumor persists because the result, those haunting hollows, felt too dramatic to be just lighting, tape, and genius. The truth may be simpler, which somehow makes it more haunting. Why call them disastrous? Disastrous doesn't always mean a botched operating room. In this video, it often means human disaster: the slow erosion of ease, the loss of natural expression, the way a performance has to fight through tension. It means waking up and realizing you don't quite recognize the person you have to sell for a living. It means a world that tells you to stay 27 forever and then ridicules you for trying. For Mary Pickford, it was the disaster of the child-woman mask. For Crawford, the disaster of trying to outwork biology. For Graham, the disaster of a single feature taking the whole voice hostage. For Hayworth, the disaster of rebranding yourself so perfectly that you disappear inside the brand. For Dietrich, the disaster of tension made visible. For Novak, the disaster of 1,000 tweets drowning out a lifetime of cinema. For Curtis and Hudson, the disaster of being manufactured so successfully that evolution became betrayal. For Diller and Gabor, the disaster of turning maintenance into identity. For Mae West and Nancy Kwan, the disaster of facing an audience that insists it remembers your face better than you do. Conclusion: the mirror never blinks. Here's the truth. Hollywood still struggles to say out loud, aging is not a failure. The Golden Age treated it as one, and we inherited the habit. Some of the procedures we've discussed helped careers and confidence. Some went sideways. Most lived in gray areas, where better and worse depended on lighting, lenses, and public mood. But the engine behind them, the lie that a human face must remain unchanged to stay valuable, hasn't gone away. It just swapped fan magazines for phones. If you loved these stars at 22, consider loving them at 62, with the same generosity, the same awe. Remember that the jawline you're judging may have been the ticket that kept them housed, fed, and working in a system that punished softness and worshipped symmetry. And when a legend returns to a stage and looks different, imagine the years it took to gather that courage. Question for you: which of these stories surprised you most, and which star's journey changed how you think about perfection? Drop your thoughts below. Your take might be the one that helps someone see themselves more kindly the next time the mirror doesn't blink back exactly the way it used to. If you want a part 2 covering Golden Age men who secretly went under the knife, the early studio dentists, and the secret tape and glue tricks of 1942nd lighting maestros, say part 2 in the comments. And if you learned something today, hit like, subscribe, and share this with a movie lover who still believes the old posters were the truth. Because the real magic of the Golden Age wasn't that their faces never changed. It's that they kept showing up, cameras rolling, anyway.